open light go?
Okay. Yeah, to my understanding, it's 3 weeks long. And so when I went down, Robbie's going to his world show, the shot shows that he shows in, and he needed some horses' feet freshened up before he goes. And so the timing was perfect to be able to go down for the finals of the snaffle bit. And I got to see, I missed Isaac in the level 1. I was there the next day, but I got to see the limited, intermediate, and the true open, the finals for all of that. So that was really, really, really good. Very educational. Very educational. Yeah. To see it.
That's awesome.
How many levels of the cow horse are there?
I don't know if I really even know in the NRCHA. I just know that my mind is on level 1. I'm on the lowest level for the open. I know there's non-pro, and then I don't know I don't know if there's novice, and I don't know. I haven't even looked at it.
Okay.
I know the versatility organization I was in, they had like novice, intermediate, limited, open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's youth classes, I know.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then they have within the open, they have levels, I guess.
Yeah, and it's all based on money earnings. So
Gotcha.
if you just got going, you're not winning any money. So they put you down in that level 1 until you get to a certain, and I don't even know what the numbers are, but you win an amount of money, then you're bumped into limited. You win an amount, you're automatically intermediate. And then you're like the Dawsons, Dowers, Corey Cushings. They're not allowed to be an intermediate right. They've accomplished so much. They just keep them at the top.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it a little bit more fair for people like me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't like ride past some veteran as you leave the show pen. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well.
Yeah. Corey Cushings goes and does a 224 in the reining, and then I'm next.
Yeah.
It would not feel very good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, can you expound a little bit on what you found educational about it? Because that's really cool for a guy like you, been doing this for as long as you have, and you're like, yeah, it was really educational. What stood out to you?
Well, it's something that I really want to do, and I've wanted to do it for a little while, and I've been doing it really slow. I've got friends that have been to way more shows. I was talking about it several years ago, and I've got friends now that, their career is almost showing, and I'm way behind them, and that doesn't matter, but I've just been going at it real slow. And one of the reasons I'm going so slow, my joke is I like riding horses too much to ride 15 of them a day. I don't know. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make my living doing it. I want to have fun. And so it's a process of figuring out really what's going to keep me interested, in it. Because a lot of that showing, it's to get those horses to do what those horses do at that level with that amount of power, you guys. You watch that on TV, but the finals, the big boys, that last 30 people in the open, you guys, those cow horses are sliding 30 feet. It's amazing what they're in, the amount of power going down the fence. It's that Kaylee Wilson. I don't know. Did you guys watch it at all?
I watched Isaac's run, but I didn't see anything else.
Yeah. Just the amount of power and what those horses have to have, and the combination of, there's people that were showing that you could tell their horses brains were starting to kind of run out of their ears a little bit, and then there were other horses, people you watched, and they'd get done with a big turn around or spin, and horses is just quiet, and so for me, I've been trying to hunt who I want to spend my time with to learn that game. That's been the big one for me. It's not about the showing. For me, I think it's a lot of about, can I get my horses to give that much? Because I don't know of right now. You can't get any more out of a horse. Like you've hit the line, man. That's it. To get any more out of them, I don't know what that would take. The only way you can get more is better breeding. I don't know what else you could do. They're given literally everything they got. So again, the chase of that. How do I do that? How do I stay true to my horse's mind and how he feels? And how do I do a good job of trying to keep him sound physically? I don't want to just beat up on my horse and break him down for the sake of going into a horse show, because I'm not going to make my living doing it, And so I really want to enjoy it and stay true to that for the horses. Yeah. And so I was able to, I'm hoping to get down into Nevada this winter a little bit. I hope it works out. Over here in Kansas, there's a guy hoping to ride with him a little bit. And just kind of get that. I got some horses now, and here we go. We're going to kind of take it a little bit more serious now. The learning side, guys, watching, you go over to the warm-up pen and you watch these guys and gals warm up their horses. And for me, it's pretty quick. It's not, right now I know who I'm going to spend my time watching in the warm-up pen, And you watch that Nick Dowers. He didn't make the finals, but he was still working his horses each day. And I watched him work a 2-year-old that he had, and it was rolling around like the futurity horses, almost a 2-year-old. And it was quiet and soft and sound. Things were just so right. So I don't know if it's so much mechanical things, really, at that level of how to get a horse to maneuver anymore, as it truly is how do you get a hold of that horse's insides, and how does he feel about you is what really changes the look the most. You watch Corey Cushing's made it to the finals on 5 horses. All of them bred different, and they all look the same. Like you watch Brannaman ride his horses, they all look the same, how they move around for him and what he wants. Corey Cushing's had that in the reining. Sarah Dawson has it in the reining. It's crazy at that level to be able to have that. And they got something, there's dang sure something there that I want. I want it bad. Yeah. For my horses. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the little bit I know about it. And I told you before we started recording, had a long drive. And so I listened to some of that. I think it's called, this is probably bad because it's like a rival podcast, but Cow Horse Full Contact. And it's got Russell Dilday is his name. And then I'm blanking on the other guy. But they do a really good job.
Chris Dawson.
Yeah, Chris Dawson. Yeah. And so they do a really good job with their show. But it is interesting hearing them talk about that whole deal, because I don't really know anything about rein cow horse. But, it's obviously you can get down to like little movements and, like you said, mechanical stuff. But it's like part of the, if you spend enough time, is like how they bring those horses along. Like you said, like how do you put all that in there and then put it in there in a way that it doesn't completely, it doesn't detract from the look of your horses,
Sure.
So it's like, yeah, they're really good at they're really good at all the maneuvers, and obviously they have an understanding of that. But over time, it seems like you become way better of like the whole story of the horse, from like starting it to making it, like a horse in the world's greatest or something like that. And like that's what struck me about listening to those guys talk, was those guys who seem like they're kind of veterans, they put a bigger emphasis on the process than like specific maneuvers or anything like that.
Yep. Absolutely. Joe, I don't know. I think I'm just growing up, getting a little bit more okay with myself. And I've been around the horsemanship world, and I've seen people ride horses and hated it, right? I've now been around the performance world and seen people ride horses and hated it. I've seen the performance world where I watch people and love it, what they do. And same thing in the horsemanship world. So it's not, what I know of the performance world, and when you listen to those people, is if those horses aren't taken care of, those guys can't make a living. That's how they make their living. So if those horses aren't taken care of and it's not done right to where they can get to a point to where they can win, that's where you watch Corey Cushing's. I loved watching Corey Cushing's, and I don't know all of what happens behind closed doors, you guys. I don't know. Or Sarah Dawson, you watch her, right? Or Dowers. And you just watch their horses go, and there is way more good than bad. Otherwise, those horses can't operate like that, you guys. They can't.
Mm-hmm.
I know enough about the horse's mind to know that. You know, would a person agree with it? No, I don't agree with how people live their lives half the time, and they don't agree with how I live mine. I mean, you're never going to get that. But that process you're talking about, that is the part that they're all trying to figure out. Because once you get to where you can do the maneuver, it's not about the maneuver anymore. It's really how relaxed that horse can be to do the maneuver himself, to be the most efficient he can be, the classiest he can be, right? To show the judges. That's the challenge. It's not the maneuver. The challenge is, how do I get him relaxed to where it looks really, really good to the judges? That's the game. So it really, in that performance world, at that high level, it comes truly down to how the horse feels. Now, I'm not going to sit here and judge whether somebody's accomplishing that or not. I'm not going to talk about that. You see a horse and his mouth is going crazy and foam's running out of his mouth, well, make your own call. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get down into the weeds, because I know what I'm looking for, and I know what I'm going to try and chase with it, you know? I think there's a saying that Jesus sat with the sinners, but he didn't sin with them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I do know, what the performance horse world has done for me. My horses are never better. Jayton told me that quite a while ago. He said, if you start showing, whether you ever show one or not, if you ride one like you're trying to make a cow horse, you'll never have a better horse. He's not wrong. He's 100% right. And what I'm so thankful for is my foundation to get one going, right? With Brannaman and people like that. And then now being able to then take that and put a little bit more into these horses, because I know a lot of horses that can't go into that show ring and perform, but I know a lot of horses in the show ring that can go to a branding, you know? Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm chasing. I want those horses just more, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, and I've said this before on the podcast, but probably not for a while, like that process is kind of where like the art of it all is, because it's no different. Like if you didn't know anything about music and I had to teach you to play guitar or something, like you'd have to learn your scales and your chords. And any type of art, there is almost an element of, first you have to learn all the rules, so then you know the right way to break them later, right? Because any sort of art form, it's not just, oh, look at all these rule followers, you know, otherwise you're hanging out with like engineers, not artists. But you have to have that ability to understand, you know, in this case, we talked about the maneuvers and have things be correct. And then when you have that base, that's like when the art of it all, whether you're, you know, whatever kind of horse you're trying to make, you know, in this case, we're talking about rein cow horse. That process to me is like kind of where the art starts. And then it could be the same for, you know, if you're trying to make really nice dressage horses or really nice jumping horses or whatever their job's going to be.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. You know, the way I'm trying to look at it in the process of this, I'm lucky enough I've got 3 different people that are committed to me for 2025 to go into the fraternity. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go to Texas or I'm going to go to Reno, or I'm going to find a small one that nobody knows about. You know? But I'll be fraternity in those horses somewhere, somehow, depending on what I can get done with myself between now and then, right? And I'm really looking forward to that and that process that you're talking about. But I know that the foundation that I have and what I've already been able to get done with kind of getting horses to move around a little bit, that it's the chase for me in it It's not the showing itself. A lot of times if I get on my horse and I go out and I ride out in the hills, I'm the judge and the jury, right? Whether the horse does good or bad, I'm the one. And it's about like when you first start watching yourself on video, you kind of go, that looks pretty good and that looks absolutely terrible. But what looked good felt bad to you. And what looked bad felt good to you. The opposite, you know? So the videos and that kind of stuff has really turned my mind to a different place. And what I mean is I'm really trying to figure out how do I get these things done with the foundation I have and my horse really, really like me at the end of the day. The joke is I kind of want my horse to feel about me as if he felt about a little 13-year-old girl, you know, just comfortable and relaxed and not scared and just willing to just kind of do whatever, just crawl around, you know, just really, really a good horse. And then to where I can get maybe another level of movement out of them, you know? And so again, we're repeating that spot. It's once you kind of have a little bit of that foundation, like you're talking, it's really how the horse feels. And that's what I'm chasing. And Joe Walter has helped me a lot. I mean, there's been several people, right? But Joe, however he put it into words, has really helped me. Joe's saying is, if you think your horse can do it, drop your reins and see if he can still do it. And if he can't, then you don't have what you thought you had. And that's a big one, right? And you start dropping your reins, it changes the whole scenario. And it makes you realize how much we do ride with our hands and our legs, even though we may think we're not. And that's a big one for Joe. You know, you'll talk to him about watching the show or a show, or he'll watch me ride or whatever thing. He'll always say, I sure like to see those reins a little bit longer. You watch Dowers, I can't remember what show it was, but he rode a bridle horse this year, and he did his whole reining pattern and worked a cow, and I didn't see him pick up his reins one time. That's big, you guys. That horse knows his game. And you could say in the reining that it was patterned, but as soon as he opens the gate and works that cow, it's no pattern anymore. The horse understands, right? That's the separation of it all. So back to it again, the physical health of the horse, right, Joe? And the mental well-being of that horse is number one on my list. And then I'm going to work my way up into getting more power. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Makes sense.
And then when you're at the fraternity and you're watching people warm up, you can kind of see, and I'm probably wrong in my judgment. I'm not going there to judge in a negative way. I'm going to watch and learn and say, this feel that I'm trying to chase in my experience of this feel, does that person look like they're feeling the same way about their horse? And I'm telling you, there's more that do than don't. There's way more that do than don't, because you don't get to that level and not feel of a horse. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I totally understand that feeling of getting inspired. I get what you mean by that. And a little bit, like you said, you feel like you're just growing up. I know we're not that old, Joe and I, but we were just talking the other day about, not getting your identity from what you do as much. Yep. And I feel like that ties into that feeling of growing up. It's a little bit of that feeling of not taking yourself so seriously all the time. And then when you are in that environment, I don't think you have to get inspired just by people that even do what you do, right? Like you're inspired there. I was watching a little show the other day on YouTube about the French Laundry and Thomas Keller. And by the end of that thing, hearing about his whole dream, starting out as a dishwasher and this dream to have this restaurant with this amazing dining experience, and then having chef and wait staff and cooks that were like traditional and all in order and communicate well together and have this perfectly orchestrated environment in the kitchen. And I'm listening to that, and it made me want to not go be a chef, but it made me want to go do what I do way better. And I felt the same way, when we've talked to Robbie after a show, or when we've had someone like Nick Dowers on here, or when you watch a movie about a guy who, restored some community or saved a forest, or anyone who does something really well. and they pursue it, to the top level of that discipline, it makes you want to do what you do way better. And so I could totally understand that, where you're watching the rein cow horse and the guy at the top. How could that not inspire you, whether you're trying to chase what he's doing or you're chasing something slightly different on a parallel or in a completely different industry, taking that energy and that inspiration and wanting to chase that, because they're not taking themselves so seriously that they're trying to, like Joe said, they're not trying to like follow a certain pattern. They're looking to break rules. They're looking to do the best they can and follow this passion they have. And it's not going to end up at some prescribed place with all their buddies or all the other people in their think group. It's going to end up wherever that passion takes them and the hard work they put in. And they'll end up somewhere. They don't know where they're going to end up even. And it's going to be awesome. And you'll end up somewhere too if you take on that same spirit of hard work and excitement. And like you said, feeling okay with yourself. I don't know. I would love to hear you expound on that a little bit more, because that's something that keeps coming up lately. And I think, even when you just mentioned that you don't want your life to be riding 15 horses a day and then not enjoying it. Yeah. I feel like that's part of that too. It's that allowing yourself to really think, like, what do I want to do, instead of what do I need to do in order to fulfill the idea of Ricky Quinn that I had in my mind. Or for me, what do I need to do every day in order to fulfill this plan that I used to have for who Ben should be when he grows up, instead of like, how do I feel today? Who do I want to be like today? What feels right today? Because maybe it's a little different than yesterday. And all my friends might be like, hey man, what are you doing? You said you were going to do that. Well, I'm not living your life. I'm living my life. And so each day is going to, hopefully each day you grow and you do change a little bit.
Yeah. You want me to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I would love to hear that.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit of the process for me, you guys kind of already have an idea of what I came from, my childhood and that kind of thing, and then the process I went through, being sober, staying away from alcohol, and then define sobriety. I'm still not sober. There's other areas, and then through that and going through that process, being around the guys I was around or still around, talk to all the time about sobriety, moving forward, then helping others with sobriety. It's really been a fun thing. I've got a few people that, because of, I guess, who I am or what I do or whatever it is, or a cowboy or whatever it is, that there's quite a few guys that live in the hills that they want help with sobriety. And I do my best to help them and support them and the whole thing. And then through that process of going through that, and me helping them and trying to maintain my own. And then with my wife and my kids, it's even, and I'm not going to go off on a crazy tangent here, so don't get me wrong here, but it's brought us closer to God, right? And so then creating that relationship, and that's one thing I love about my relationship with Joe Walter is we visit about that an awful lot. And it's becoming a very, very important part for me. And it's becoming a very important part for a family. And so when you, as a young man, I remember name a self-help book, and I probably read it, the known ones, there's like 10 or 11 of them sitting right here. I'll go through a book every few weeks, I love that stuff. And I don't usually read books on stories and this or that. It's usually the subjects that I'm talking about, how do I find myself? And I just love it. Always have loved it. In that process, when I was a young man, reading those books, and if you want to be successful, you got to work harder than anybody around you, right? You got to put more hours in. You've got to. And it's just pressure. If you really look at it, I always got it that way. That's how I took it. Pressure. And if you want to be successful, you got to put more on yourself. Maybe it's because I've gotten older, a little bit more wise. Maybe I'm a little bit more efficient now with how I think, what I do, my decision making. I don't know making less mistakes, so I'm not trying to catch up, so I have to put more pressure on myself. I don't know. But that motivation to move forward now for me is way more relaxed than what it ever was before. And with that relaxation, and I give a lot of credit to, there's a lot of people, but again, I give a lot of credit, that relaxation, to Joe, just how he is, and the questions he asks me, and the things he challenges me on in my mind. He's brought a lot of relaxation to me, and amongst other things that we've already talked about. But that motivation to move forward, what I'm looking at, Ben and Joe, is I know what I want to do. How do I get good at this and in the most relaxed form that I possibly can with inside of my guts? You know, I don't want to go out and run 30 miles today. You know, I've got a couple friends that they run a lot, you know, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to. There's that saying, if you don't feel like you die at least once a day, you're not working hard enough. You know, I don't want to do that. I'm exhausted with that stuff. So I'm trying to ease my guts. I'm trying to get soft in my guts, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I go to this level that I want to go to, soft inside? And I don't mean, as Brandeman would say, milk toast, right? I don't mean roll over soft. There's a word that's called meek. I don't know if you guys have heard much of that word, but lately I've been hearing a lot about it, and the description behind it. And that really sets with me, that word, and trying to be meek, but soft inside, but still still have that fire built in you. Because a lot of times, I know there was a phase there where I was trying to find that softness inside, and if you're not careful, you can maybe get lazy, you know? And so you don't want that to creep in. So how do you maintain that softness and that relaxation, but still have that excitement and that drive, but feel balanced inside? Because usually as young men, if we're going to get excited and we're going to go get something, you know, the blood starts flowing, and you know what I mean, you guys? The heart starts pumping, and let's go get it. And that's it for me. And maybe it's an age thing. Maybe it's because I'm getting a little older. I don't know. But that's what's on my mind, you know? And that's translated, that way of being. I'm getting so much more done with my horses, whether it's... there was a horse I worked on this horse's feet for this lady the other day. And she said, I worked the horse, and the horse never bobbled. Got around him. Never bobbled. I broke. And she said, that was really nice that you did it that way, because we had to drug him last time. He was trying to bite the person that was trying to work his feet. I didn't even think anything of it. You know, if I felt something in the horse, I just waited for him and gave, and just ding, 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 and just walked right on around him, you know. My point is, I used to get into a lot more fights with my horses. I used to get in a lot more fights with people. And just trying to find that spot. Now these horses are really starting to relax, and I'm getting so much more done mentally and physically with them than I ever did before. And I didn't realize that you could kind of be softer and get more done. I always thought you had to work harder and be stronger to get more done. It's complete opposite for me today. And it feels a lot better. Yeah. Might go bankrupt, but at least I'll be relaxed inside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think a part of that, Ricky? I mean, it's kind of like horses, you know, like you have to fit the horse, because not all horses are the same. I've only known you for like a year or so now, but you know, I knew who you were and kind of your background and everything. Like, you know, you're kid from Wyoming, you wrestled, like, you know, got into this stuff, and just the handful of conversations I've had with you, like, I think you like have kind of been predisposed to that sort of laser focused grind mentality. Like, especially anyone I've ever met who's at least a half decent wrestler, it's like having conversation with a Doberman. They're like, I'm really focused on what I'm doing. Like, you know, because it's just the type of sport where you need a high level of conviction
Yeah.
and really commitment to do well, as opposed to, all sports are like that, but maybe a golfer's or a tennis player is a little more laissez-faire, but wrestlers are like, no, I'm going to go like manipulate another human being. So they're like laser focused.
Yeah.
Because, you talk about those self-help books, and maybe a lot of young men are kind of predisposed to them the same way. Like, I know a lot of guys who that's exactly what they need, is somebody to tell them, like, dude, you need to get off your butt and like you need to go run 30 miles a day, and like you need to put that eye of the tiger inside of you. But it sounds like to me, from like your early life, you kind of just had that already, right? And of course it's about balance. So yeah, that's interesting. Like you said, I think a really good example of this is actually last weekend, to bring it back to horses, or I guess 2 weekends ago now. Anyway, my fiance and I went up, and she rode with Melanie Smith Taylor and Alicia Landman.
Oh, cool.
And, I was watching Alicia work with all these giant warm bloods and stuff, and she was doing the groundwork, and holy crap, she's a hardworking lady, because she got through like 20 some warm bloods in one day, and they were all, not all of them, but maybe 2/3 of them were trying to run her over and all this stuff. And, I saw Alicia get a lot of changes, but I never saw her like bring a sledgehammer to get changes. And me being like a male in my 20s, there were some times I was watching her and I was like, okay, here comes the sledgehammer, because this is where I would bring the sledgehammer. And then she didn't do that, because she's wiser and maybe has a little more gentle disposition than I do. And it really made me think. I was like, man, I hope that one day I can get like that, where I don't have to be, and again, bring it back to horses because it's something we all know, but there's a lot of life like that, where it's like, okay, maybe you can do this with a sledgehammer, but what if you don't have to use a sledgehammer?
Yeah.
Would everyone feel better if we didn't get the sledgehammer out today? And when you're, maybe when you're young and you feel like you got a lot to prove, and you just almost inherently have a chip on your shoulder, like you can find anything. It seems like you can find anything to get irritated about, like, oh, they're doubting me about this now, and da 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 and da da da. And you lack that identity, that confidence in your identity, that you're kind of predisposed to get the sledgehammer out. And so, when you were talking about all that, it made me think back to watching Alicia work those horses, because she, for whatever reason, it'd be probably interesting to talk to her about it, but for whatever reason, she doesn't feel that need. And maybe it's because she has done that in the past and she's wiser now. Maybe she just has kind of a different disposition than maybe you or I would have. So
she's actually kind. That's
yeah. Yeah. Well, as Joel Connor once said when I was talking to him about a horse on the phone, he's like, yeah, you're like a white guy in your 20s, so you just have a little John Wayne's disease still. and so when things aren't going well with the horse, you're like, damn it, we're going to get it done come hell or high water, because I'm right. John Wayne.
That's right.
Darn it. That's right. And so, yeah, maybe she doesn't have quite as much John Wayne disease in her as at least I know I do. I won't speak for you or Ben, but I know I get that from time to time, especially if I'm irritated with a horse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been around Alicia quite a little bit. I've never really seen, I'm sure, I'm sure she gets aggravated. But you really don't see it on her too much. She does a really good job of maintaining her composure. And I've always seen her do that with her horses. I've always seen her horses like her. And if she was on a horse that was busy mouthed or didn't want to stand still or something like that, to me, my interpretation was that horse has daddy issues from before, and it's new to Alicia, and she's trying to help this horse feel more comfortable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've always seen. But then when she gets a horse turned around, like that, you guys know that horse, a Marlin, right? The big sorrel horse in the bridle that I think Riv mostly rides now. Just that's what I want my horse to look like, you guys. That is it right there. That's it. And that's how I want them to feel about me. Honestly, my wife's horses and Alicia Lamon's horses are horses that I have pictures in my mind of what I want mine to look like, about how they feel about me. That's the truth. It's those two people. And because they're very similar in how their horses look to them. The tricky thing is, for me, is how do I get that, but then have them very explosive, to get to where they need to get, but stay very quiet, very relaxed, not get rattled. That's the challenge, right? For me right now, that's what I'm trying to figure out how to get done. Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit like the same trait you're trying to master yourself. Like, have the ability to be a conqueror and but be kind. When I was listening to you, Joe, it reminded me of that saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And like, maybe those young guys you're talking about, maybe they need to go to boot camp. But for some other guys, you're a warrior and you're in a garden and you're walking around with your armor, slinging your sword, and you don't need to do that. And just having that ability to just chill. When you were talking, Ricky, about those books, I don't know. I've been influenced by all kind of random stuff. But it did make me think of one guy that I had met one time, and he was fairly successful, and the kind of guy you would think, okay, to get where you got, you had to be like a bulldog. But no, he said, no, the number one thing to me would be you got to learn patience. You've got to learn how to be patient. And I was like, huh. And there's your warrior. He's in the garden. He's got armor. He can fight. He can kill. But he's like, yeah, but you don't have to kill if there's no war. Like, you need to learn patience. And that's really hard for me. Really hard.
I'm getting anxiety thinking about being patient. It's so hard for me, you guys. I struggle with it. Man, if I think about it, it worries me. And learning how to turn loose to that. And I didn't realize that's a huge thing that just flows through me. I don't know. I haven't really decided if it's or figured out if it's just my wiring, if it's learned behavior from how I grew up or the people that I've been around, or I don't know. But all I know is I got to get it sorted out because it's not good.
Yeah.
That patience and relaxation. But again, I don't mean that in just like a milquetoast soft way. There's still that be a warrior in a garden.
Yeah. But and it flows through your whole life, because I don't know if it ever happens to you, but it happens to me. I'll be in town driving around, and I disconnect that from riding horses. So I'm like, oh, I'm in town, I'm driving. And then you start yelling at people and you're getting ticked at the old lady because she doesn't use her blinker and get off the road fast enough. And again, I think, like you said, don't be milquetoast. Like, that is really bad driving. Like, don't start driving like her. And if you ever had the chance, let's say you're teaching your kids how to drive, like someday when I have kids, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that's fine, just drive like, no, I'd be like, hey, don't do that. That's disrespectful. But yelling at the person and stomping your foot and getting mad and then gunning your truck right after they get out of the way, that's way too much. That's like, what are you doing? Like, you're doing nothing. You have the information that it's not good to drive really lousy, but you acting like that is like, it's the antithesis to being that peaceful, thoughtful, meek, the word you use, meek guy. It doesn't mean you can't drive well and you wouldn't instruct someone else to drive better and you wouldn't do better by all means. It just means that there's no use. You're wasting energy and you're being a total jerk. And so to me, it's like, that's the kind of thing where it is easy to start sectioning off your life and you get your identity from like, well, I'm getting really good with horses. But, well, how are you with everything else? And I think I we talked to someone about this, but I remember riding along with a friend and he was doing that. And while we were driving, we had a whole day to travel together. And he rides with Joe. And so he's really into talking about that, being calm and meek and all in it for the horse. And he would get so pissed at those cars. And so we drove all day together. And then that night we were having dinner. We had stopped in Missouri. And like during the conversation that night, he was like, I think I've got to get better with people. I think I've got to start being kinder to people because it started to click, and it was really cool because it's true. You're out there all about the horse, but it isn't all about the horse. It's kind of all about you because you're going to affect everything you touch.
Joe was, without details, it wouldn't be right, but there was a scenario in his life where a horse situation and somebody rode it, and I said, did you got the horse back, whatever. And I said, did you like how the horse operated? And he said, no, it was terrible. I was like, oh, that's kind of surprising, because of what the scenario was. That's kind of a big deal. And he said, but Ricky, your relationships with people are more important than horses. And I'm not going into details, but what he was talking about, he is 100% correct. Like, as an example, I pick my family over horses. I do. Now, just a handful of years ago, I don't think I could say that. But what I've been doing with myself and inside and everything else, 110%, it's not even a question. I pick my family over horses. But horses are what I appreciate so much about horses. I mean, horses are like the second thing. You follow me? But the thing that they did is horses were the thing that was there. It was the tangible. It was, we talked about this maybe last time on the podcast, but for me, horses are the thing. They don't lie to you, right? People are inconsistent. So if you have a relationship with somebody and they say, Ricky, you're being like this, I'd appreciate if you adjusted to be more like this. Because of how we've been done wrong, or we've done wrong, or whatever you want to call it, right, through the process here, we don't trust it a lot of times. And because we have changed as a little kid when we were pure, and then we didn't get supported through that to keep that going. Maybe we were done, something happened, or we did it to ourselves. We truly made a bad decision and got off course. Maybe it was nobody else. My point is, horses can help bring you back, because I know for myself, if I'm lucky enough to recognize a place in my horse where that horse is saying, this does not fit me the way you are. You are out of line with my makeup. And I recognize that, and then I start working on myself to get in line with that makeup in that horse. He changes. And he usually changes twice for you, 2-to-1. And you can be convinced that how I am right now, and this horse adjusting and being better, if I'm honest with myself, he's now being better about me in his life, that then I try to hang on to that and leave the arena with that, and it helps me. That horse is the tangible. It's about the closest thing you can get to God, right? As far as purity and just the way and honest. The horse is honest with you. They don't just let you walk around him and be however you want to be. They really don't. If you are trying to get something done with them, And so there's just such a gift in that area. Yeah. And I think what can happen in the books, what I've learned for myself is very, very fortunate to be able to have the place we have, the things that we have, all this stuff. But I think sometimes in those books, to get better at things and be successful, and we really need to sit down and try to sort through that and figure out what that actually means. What does a new pickup really mean to you? Right?
Yeah.
When you drive it down the road, are you wondering what people are thinking of it? I don't know. I'm just come up with like, you can kind of be chasing some of the wrong stuff. And I don't mean this as if now Ricky, if people still know me, they still know me and they know that this is Ricky Quinn. He's still got that side to him. I'm not saying that now my wife and I are selling everything we have and then, we're just going to live in teepees in the wilderness. That's not what's happening here. I'm just trying to figure out how I can be as efficient as I can be, but be relaxed and make sure I sleep every night. That's my motivation. Yeah. And I was going to mention something. This might be something kind of interesting too. If you guys didn't have anything else, I kind of wanted to bring this up. You guys good? All right. So
I just have one thing before we go on.
Okay.
Because it's relevant to what we were just talking about. Do you guys? You probably don't, but do you guys know who Eric Spoelstra is? So he coaches the Miami Heat. He's an NBA coach, but he has this big thing. He's a big culture guy, and he might not be the first person to say it. But I thought of this quote from him when we were talking. He says, "How you do anything is how you do everything."
Yep, I know the quote. Yep.
And like, I've been thinking about that quote a lot lately, and this whole conversation's kind of reaffirming that. And his deal is like, guys keeping their lockers clean and like punctual, just how you run a tight ship, right? If you're running an organization. But it's the same thing for horses. Like, you can't be a good horseman and then drive into town and drive like an asshole, like you're not really a good horseman. Then you might be getting some things done, but like, ask your horses deep down. And, so I've been thinking about that a lot, and I felt like that kind of summed up what we were talking about, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So you just keep that in mind next time things are going south.
Yeah. You say you can't be a good horseman. I get people, there's the conversations. I hate these conversations. I just hate them now. I used to like them. I used to love the drama. Hate it now. And one of the conversation is, who is the best? You follow me? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. All I know is what I'm looking for, a feel that I'm looking for, and I'm just going to go try to find that. And the people that emulate that, that's what I'm going to go try and get. And that's all I've got. But with what you're saying, like to be the best, and sometimes we can get like in the performance world, who is the best? Whoever has won the most money in their career. That's how that sport is gauged. You follow me? And where the performance world, I think, can get I don't know it well enough, but when you watch it, where maybe somebody can get out of line with it, is they get to chasing those things, and then we forget about the animal that takes us there and gets us those things, and how the animal feels about it, right? And I know the animal can feel good about it because there's people that are doing it at a high level and their animals like them. So I know it's possible, right? And just getting out of line there, sometimes a person can keep their locker clean or their car clean and be almost so uptight about it, Joe, right? That they're almost crazy in their own mind because a little bit of dust is on the dash of their pickup. And so that quote is, I like those kinds of quotes. That's what I'm talking about with all these self-help books. But if we're not careful, it can almost get a person to where they're a little bit too uptight too, in trying to make sure everything is in line and right, or you're not going to be successful, and it can just drive you crazy too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and then again, at least with that quote, so okay, let's use like, if you're a basketball player and you're cleaning your locker, if you're that detail oriented, but like, what if you spend an extra half hour cleaning your locker every day, and then you aren't like, because you're so like nitpicky about that, then you go home and you're like nitpicky about your wife and you're nitpicky about your kids. And so it, like you said, it is true, but I mean, gosh, that's not a new thing, is like, you offer people advice and then they get fanatical about it. I mean, that's like how you get religious extremists. That's how you get Nazis. That's how you get everything, And I'm not comparing like horsemanship people to Nazis if they're really, really particular. but
Maybe
like,
you should. You probably should. There's some people. I've been
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
Well, it's funny. This morning we had to get in a handful of calves, Wheaton calves that were going in this sale later, going in a BQA sale. And we had to get them in first thing because the guy was coming to look at them, the sale rep. And the gal that works for me, she's coming along and she's learning some things. But today we were I was like, we got to go. So just, do a little groundwork and then get on and we got to go. And she made the comment after we brought the calves in. She was like, oh, it feels great today. I'm surprised I didn't even do that much groundwork with her. I didn't really warm her up that much. I'm like, yeah, because today you did enough to make sure she was feeling back to you. And then you guys just went and did a job. You didn't like nitpick her hindquarters for another 15 minutes before you got on. That's right. Or whatever it is. And I'm not picking on her because I feel like everyone who's been around horsemanship has done the same thing. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, you were actually enjoyable to be around today because it was like, hey, I'm good. Are you good? Yeah, you're good. Okay, well, let's get on and we got a little job to do.
Yeah.
And it all worked out. And then there's other times I've seen, her work on this, and then her and this little mare she rides just get so bothered. Both of them are just so bothered. And so it was kind of ironic because I was trying my best not to put any pressure on them. Like, okay, we do need to do this in a timely fashion, but don't like freak out that we're in a rush, but just that little bit of pressure, it caused her like, okay, well, I got to focus on this more than having my horse exactly right. And then the horse was like, oh man, I can actually take a breath today and do my job. So
for sure. Yep.
It's just funny.
And that's what we should be chasing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, all right. So what did you want to bring up, Ricky? Because I'm excited to hear this.
Maybe I forgot.
Oh no. I had a feeling that was going to happen.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. There was I hear a lot in the horsemanship world. I heard a guy say, the people that show are just wanting the ribbon or the acknowledgement of other people and being looked at in the show ring and that whole thing. And you guys know it's an industry, right? I mean, these people, it's an industry that's created. It's like playing football or that kind of thing. They got to perform. It's an industry, and it comes down to being entertainment. People watch it. They watch how these horses go. These horses are competing in a sport, and may the best horse and rider win. Okay. And that, what I would like to share with people that I think is really something for me too is I've done some things that have been competitive, some at higher levels than others. And whenever I got to a point to where then I had to go, if it was wrestling and you go out on the mat and there's a crowd of people watching, it makes you feel a certain way inside. And I was always the one where it's a little bit scary, There was friends that I had that had so much confidence and they were so good at what they did that like it fueled them. I was the opposite, still am the opposite, to where when I go in, I can get pretty nervous and it just makes me feel really it can make not so uncomfortable like I'm going to throw up, but it's darn sure I'm a pretty confident person, and it's a place that makes me question my confidence. And am I ready? You follow me? That's one of the reasons why I want to go into that show pen. Man, when you go to the finals at that cow horse and all those people, and like a Matt Cook comes trotting in there and spins his horse around and brings that cow in, and then it comes out, and then the energy comes up in that place. That would be a really interesting spot to be, to see how you can manage your insides to do a good job. That's just another place to add some pressure to you, to see how you can handle it. Because one of the sayings that I have is, you want to find something out about anything, add pressure to it and see how they respond. Your horses, your dogs, right? Your wives, your friends, whatever it is. When they have
yourself.
Pressure, exactly. When you get pressure, how do you handle it? And so what I'm trying to do with it is when I ride in there, This is what I'm working my mind into. When I ride in there, I'm okay with whatever happens, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to win. So I don't really know how to get through that yet and what that all means, but I'm okay with whatever happens, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to win. And finding that within myself, because when I watch guys like a Dowers as an example, he's a guy that when he rolls in, the confidence he has. Corey Cushings is in the finals. He comes around and he makes his first lead change into a small slow. He's had a set, he's at the end of the set. He's had people ahead of him coming in doing big sliding stops on the end. He comes around on a small slow in the finals, looks over to figure out his next line coming in for his first rundown to see where everything's clean in that arena. That would be the last thought I would have if I was in there, you know? The relaxation in that guy and the confidence that's there. And that's one of the reasons his horses ride the way they do, you know? It's not about the showing, guys. It's about putting ourselves into positions that challenge us and then deciding how we're going to handle those spots inside. And I don't know of a place for me. I can go saddle. I'm going to Wyoming, to Douglas, Wyoming, to wean a whole bunch of calves. I leave tomorrow. I'm not going to have an ounce of nervousness in me. I remember when I used to go into a branding and be nervous. I can't get nervous. You know, those areas are, so I'm trying to find some spots that, because if I can get through some of that nervousness, at the end of the day, I'm truly more confident within myself. The key is finding it in a way in that show pen to where I can keep a handle on the ego that God gave me. You know what I mean? And not get too prideful and have that ego run away and let that be what keeps me from being nervous rather than just being quiet and humble and just confident within yourself in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
That makes a lot of sense, Ricky. And I think this is a good time for a question I actually wanted to ask you earlier. You know, you're talking about going about this slow, and now you've got some horses lined up for 2025. You know, part of this, because you've accomplished a lot in the horse world and you're working on accomplishing more. Part of this is learning how to show. And so I know you've got 3 young horses, but do you feel like at some point the rubber is going to have to meet the road and you're going to have to just go get reps showing? Because like I've been around people who are good horsemen, and then you put them in a competition setting or just a setting they're not used to, and then it's like I don't think this would necessarily happen to you, but it's like they don't know how to ride anymore. They're like the cool is just completely gone because maybe they just don't like. There's one thing being able to ride and be able to get a lot out of your horse. There's another thing to be able to go and compete. And, you know, to a certain extent, you do have to kind of have that eye of the tiger. Like, I'm here, I'm going to compete. That confidence you were talking about.
Yep.
And those people have that confidence because they live in the show pen, you know, and, you know, the way you had to like live on a ranch or, you know, live at all these brandings every spring, I'm sure, to get to where it's not nervous anymore. So like, have you thought about a game plan for that? Like, for example, I think Robbie's probably a good example of this, where he's in like that smaller association, and I don't know how much he's showing, but he's going and learning to show in that association. So like, have you been thinking about that? Have you been showing other horses to kind of learn to flex those muscles? Like, how have you been doing that? Because I know that can be really hard for people. Some people, there are like a handful of unicorns out there, and I'm friends with a couple guys. They're not horsemen, but like competition has never made them sweat in their life. Sure. I'm not one of those guys, and it sounds like you're not either. So like, what's the game plan there? Because that there's more to that than just having your horses ready.
Yeah. I've shown a little bit, not a lot, a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I was okay. Riding in, there was some stuff. so I've got some experience. I know what it feels like to ride in there and have somebody judge you on your horse. Okay. And so I know, and I've been in situations in my life where I felt that same feeling, and I've made it through that feeling. So I kind of have a pretty good idea of what I need to do to get myself through that. Another part is, I do have a horse here that I'm going to show this summer, and I'm going to show him in the Colorado circuit in the NRCHA's Colorado circuit. And so I'll be swinging with some of the bigger riders that are out there in the summertime through that Colorado. So I'm going to be, like you said, getting the reps. I'm not going to wait till the fraternity, right?
Right.
But I'm going to get some reps, learn more, do more, I am definitely going to keep rolling. But what I do know, I've been able to play a little bit of competitive golf, stroke play golf, a little bit, not a lot, some. The wrestling side of things, a little bit of the horse show, the competition stuff that I have done. I have an idea of when my horse feels good to me and he knows. Like when I pick up on him, I know he's going to execute that maneuver. I have him prepared. I'm prepared and he's prepared. So that's the big one for me, is I'm getting a better idea now of what that horse has to, and it's always going to be a learning thing. The preparation's always just going to be more and more and more. But at the level where I feel I am and where I'm going to be going, I feel like I'm going to be prepared. Is that, you follow me? The more preparation I have to know that when I pick up and how I want this horse to depart, I know he's going to do it 100% of the time. If he doesn't, I was off in la la land. It wasn't him. You know what I mean? And if I go to, I've spent the time on the cattle to where when one comes in, I know we're going to hold this thing. The only way I'm not going to hold it is if it's just an ignorant calf that runs under his neck, and nobody's going to hold it. But if there's a little bit of feel in that calf, and no matter what he throws at me, I can hold him because I'm prepared. And I think that's the key. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Is being prepared and being able to ride in there and say, and I think the other one too is being honest with yourself and being prepared at the level you are is a big one. To where when I go into the show pen, that if I don't have my lead changes clean yet, that I'm just aware of that and I'm okay with whatever happens. And I don't let my stomach, create diarrhea because I missed my lead change. I knew that could happen before I went in because of this horse doesn't have it yet. You don't be disappointed, and even don't be disappointed if you think you haven't prepared and you don't get it, because I'm sure that's going to happen too. I mean, I talked to Dowers about, I just said, sorry, man, you didn't make the finals. And he said, that's how horse showing goes. I talked to Jayton. He had a calf run through him. Terrible calf in the herd work. And I said, sorry that you lost that calf, man. He made it to the finals. And that's like, dang it, because that hurts against this level of rider. And he goes, that's how horse showing goes. Every one of those people is just like, that's how it goes. And I don't know what they do behind closed doors, punching holes in the wall, but at least in public, that's how they handle it, So I think that when you say exercising the muscles and the preparation for it and everything else, the going into the show pen is what tells you what those horses need to know so you can be competitive. A lot of those guys don't go to the show pen until the horse is ready. I can appreciate what you're saying because I don't even know if I'm ready. I don't even know if I know what I'm doing. So yes, I'm going to be going into the show pen, and I guarantee you I'm going to embarrass myself a lot so that I can figure out what it takes to get that done so I can be prepared to go in. Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, only way to get better is to be uncomfortable. So
yep, that's exactly right.
It's just the nature of the beast. And all those guys that they don't take a horse to a show until the horse is ready, they only know what the standard is because they've taken a horse to a show that wasn't ready.
That's 100% right.
It's not, you can't wave a magic wand. I mean, I think the only thing you could ever really do would maybe just study under those guys for years and years, but you'd probably still make mistakes. Like it's inescapable that you have to just do it yourself. I mean, it's the same thing as like Buck talks about, like, oh yeah, put your horse in the hackamore. Like it might work out, but the first couple of ones you'll be like, oh, I need to go back and do this. It's the same thing when you take them to the show pen or take them to wherever. It's like, oh, I could have better prepared them. And then, it's a balance, because you don't just want to completely overface your horse, but at some point the rubber has to meet the road and you have to see where you stand.
Trevor Carter, I've only been around him a couple of times, but I respect him so much in the advice that he has given me. And one of them is, whether you think you're ready, you just got to go. You just got to go. And he says you're never going to feel like you're completely ready. So you just got to go, It's kind of like your first child. You think that you want to prepare everything, and you're never really ready, guys. You're never ready. Just have the thing and let's roll, See what happens.
Well, and another thing too, and I'm giving them a lot of free press, so we got to get them on this podcast sooner or later. But like listening to Russell Dilday and some of these other guys talk, who kind of made a career out of this. Like I heard a podcast, and Russell said, when I was winning World's Greatest Horseman, that was like the most miserable time of my life, And so they were talking about how you want to win, but what they really enjoy with that whole like industry is the fact that they have a way to make a living going through this process, because to them, like, the process is like what they want to be doing. The process of, I compete and I bring along these 2-year-olds, and then I go and compete here and I compete here. And now this horse is at the world's greatest, but then same time I got the other 2-year-olds. And so it's like, for them, winning is being able to do that full time and like have a family and do all that stuff. And then, and I'm sure like Nick has to look at it the same way, probably, because he seems like he's got a pretty good head on his shoulders from what we've talked to him. Like, yes, you want to win, but like on the bigger scale, winning is like, I get to do that. Like, I don't have to sell insurance for a living. I get to ride rein cow horses and do all this, that's winning for them. Also. And then the highs and lows, if you're in the game long enough, those will come.
I'll tell you, watching him, just watching him, he was doing some stuff with his horses that you just don't see. I mean, you don't see it. Just how he was getting some of them horses to just crouch down and turn, and what he was doing. And it was like he's just kind of over there in the corner. It's about like watching Brannaman, how he'll just kind of drop his reins and just trot some nice figure eights, and then maybe pick up and move one over. Just the flow to it. And you watch Dowers, and when he's over there kind of just getting these horses to move the way he wants them to move and be in the frame of mind that he wants them to be in the frame. It's a lot like watching that same very methodical, very, very smooth. When he picks up on the reins, how he picks up on the reins, if he corrects, it's how he corrects. His horses don't ever get a worried look on their face. There's a difference between worried and a look of true intensity of, we're going to go get this done. I'm trying to get there. Right. And he has more of that. He has a look of, hey, because I never remembered one wrestling practice where I didn't break a sweat, And there was some times where you got put into situations you had to hustle and get your body over there, or you're going to be in trouble. The way that game works, and that's how this. If that cow's leaving, you've got to get your body over there. So a look has to come from that, an intensity comes from that horse to build a fire in him to get over there. And that can be a true intensity to get over there, and it can be scared. And there's a difference. And when I watch him ride, or you watch Sarah Dawson, you just don't see that very often. Sure, I'm sure they can get scared, but you don't see it very often, And that smoothness in the frame of, I just can't. That's the part for me, you guys. I could just sit here and visit about that all the time, because I'm trying to develop that inside of myself. When I pick up on those reins, that's how I want that horse to be. whatever I'm doing, whether I'm rolling the hind, bringing the front, backing them up, it doesn't matter. Ranch roping with my friends, at a branding, in the it doesn't matter. That's what I want out of my horses. Yeah, that is the driver. That's the thing. Yeah. But another thing that has been really interesting for me is I don't work for the Olsons anymore at the Lazy U. It's been about a month now, and everything's good there. Everything's positive there. Didn't burn any bridges. Everything's fine. And I go down to Robbie's. He's got quite a few horses there, and he brings me in every 5 weeks to keep their feet taken care of. And I've really been enjoying that a lot too. And having Tommy Kilgore on my side to help me with that. And we've been, not Tommy, but some of the customers there are okay with taking x-rays. And so to be able to see everything that I'm doing with these horses, and am I right, am I wrong, and having all of that there. And then Tommy, he's got some pretty big time barns down there now, some very, very well-known horses that he's taking care of. And very lucky the other day that he called and said, hey, I'm going to take on this other barn. It's a very well-known cutter, 80 head of horses. Will you, if I get this barn, if I choose to take it, will you help me? I can't do it all myself. So that's going to be, and I love shoeing horses, and that's going to be another fun place for me to go to, learning more from Tommy and the balance of those feet, the movement of these horses, the mechanics, and then to be able to get around that next level of the industry, and be underneath those horses and shoe them. You might see me, I might be able to get a fraternity winner shod one of these days or something, It's kind of getting into that crowd, and I'm really enjoying that and getting to know those guys and what that industry really is and what it takes. It's been a very educational thing too, Yeah.
Sorry, Ben, I feel like I'm kind of hogging Ricky, but I did have a question pertaining to all that, because I remember you mentioned that on the phone last week. A question I had for you with these performance horses. So like my knowledge of performance, or I guess show horses, kind of comes from the English side of things. And I know, like, right now, it's not all of them, but more and more of the jumpers and the hunters, just with the footing that they've been able to develop, more and more of the jumpers and the hunters have been able to start going barefoot when they compete. And so I was curious, like, on these performance horses, I know there's an element of like I know there's like slider shoes and things like that, and I just know of them. I'm not an expert. So, but like for a cutting horse, let's say, and what their job is, and they're mainly going to be in an arena. Like, are you shoeing a lot of these horses, or are they barefoot still, or is there like an optimum type of shoe for a cutter? Like, how does that all work?
It's been really interesting learning it, and I'm just now getting rolling in it. Right now, so the philosophy of shoeing is all the same. It doesn't angles, the bony column, lining up the bony column, and lining up the body. That's all it is. Whether you're running a jumper, an endurance horse, a backyard horse, a cowboy horse, a team roper, calf, it doesn't make any difference. If it's a horse, I'm going to line up the bony column. And support the body. And a lot of times you're going to change the shoe type based off of if you have to do something mechanical to adjust those angles, right? A little bit more of a rehab type thing to get foot going where you need it to go. Let's just call it that on the simple term. There's that, or a jumper is going to be shod different than a cow horse. A jumper, a cow horse, and a cow horse is going to be shod different than a cutter. Cutters do not want sliders. Cutters need to stop and get through themselves. You follow me? And I think that a lot of cutters aren't shod. A lot of cow horses have sliders on, but not shod up front for lots of reasons. One, maybe they want to save money. Two, the feet are good and they don't need the support. Or three, they get to scrambling so much they rip them off, off the front. So they just run them barefoot because they're in good footing all the time. But they still need that 30-foot slide or 20-foot slide, so you have to shoe them recording on the hind feet, to get that.
Okay. So I want to put pause on that for just a second. So when you're talking about putting a slider on a rein cow horse, so is that not like, because I realize there's a reining pattern, but then you got to do other stuff with a cow that to me wouldn't be what I would intuitively think you ought to do. So how does that all work? Like they're working these cows with sliders on, like, is that not a slippery slope?
It's
pun intended.
It's been really fun. And I think that, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb. I don't have all the experience in the world. But when you shoe a jumper, if you just have a good-footed horse, let's just say all these horses I'm talking about in these industries are all good-footed. You're not doing any correcting, okay? A jumper is pretty easy to shoe because you're pretty much just going to throw eventers on them. That's kind of what a lot of them are shod with, right? They need some traction to get to set themselves up to get over the fence. You don't want the feet sliding around. It's a pretty basic shoe, and it's wider webbed and as far as the shoe type. The cutters need to grab the ground. So if they get shoes, they're going to be shoes that aren't necessarily going to grab the ground like hawks and stuff like that, but they might be a plainer type shoe if they need shod. And if they don't, they'll try to run them barefoot, from my experience, if they can, so that they don't slide around. The cow horse is tough because you're right. He has to slide 30 feet, but then he has to go down the fence as fast as he can run and shut down and come through on a cow. So there's so many different things that I'm learning on what you can do, not with the feet. What I'm learning from who I'm learning from is you always set the foot up to balance the bony column. That's it. We don't manipulate the foot. We set the foot up to fit the horse, number one. Then we will use mechanics in the shoe to get what we need, whether it's more or less slide. And if that horse is built in such a way where he's going to track straight in the slide, well, there's some horses that slide really, really big, and you put a little bit thinner shoe on them. And there's some that need a little bit more help in the slide, so you put a little different kind of toe or a little wider shoe. There's so many different areas. But then when they go down the fence, like at the finals, I'm sure a lot of those riders had those big sliders on to slide 30 feet. And then when they came back in for the cow work portion, they went out and they put caulks in the heels of those shoes so that they could grab the ground a little bit, because they never changed the footing. But they're going, in some ways, faster coming after a cow than they are going into the reining stop, is what it seems like when you watch them, And so they don't want that horse sliding 30 feet past the cow. They need him to grab the ground, so they'll adjust those shoes a little bit and what's in them to accommodate for that, right? But then you can't do too much, or you'll rip their ankles off. So there's such a balance in all of that and figuring all of that out. That's what I love about it. There's such a art. Well, but for me and what I'm learning, the bony column is the bony column, and we shoot at the bony column, and that is absolutely the priority. And then we go from there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because soundness and movement, and the soundness is the most important part.
Yeah. Well, not to mention you get that balance dialed, right? And then next month you go to a different arena with different footing.
Yeah.
And do it all over again.
Well, but luckily it's not quite that fine. It's not quite that fine, that much of a science. Thank goodness.
It's not like NASCAR or something.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're changing tires quite that much, Yeah, like there's a arena right down here, the Kiplinger, the McCook, and they push it pretty hard. It's just kind of standard dirt, and they might be 12 feet max on their slide. That fraternity is another ball game. They kind of set things up just a little bit different because it's go for broke. And so they set it up to where they can truly get that 30-foot slide. A lot of these arenas, maybe in a fairgrounds and stuff, you're not going to quite get that. Yeah, so going down the fence, you wouldn't have to accommodate. Mm-hmm. But learning that, and I still don't know what I'm talking about with it, but I'm darn sure getting a lot of them shod, and they're doing well, and so we're getting something learned, and I'm just going to keep on going and get around. I want to get around some really good cow horseshoers. There's a friend of ours out of Kentucky who sells a lot of the higher dollar racehorses, and she's got a podiatrist on staff who it's just constant x-rays of bones and bony column. And she said that I could come and hang out with him as long as I wanted to just get that knowledge of what's going on. And when I first started shoeing, it was a pile of shoes and a horse that didn't know how to be shod. And you're just a young kid, and it's like, go find a shoe that kind of halfway fits and nail it on, and then it got a little bit more advanced, and just make sure the open parts to the back, and now it's kind of getting to a place now where I'm going to start hanging out with a podiatrist for horses. Yeah. So
you're going to have to call yourself Dr. Quinn.
You can take it as far as you want. And I would like to do that, as far as my own knowledge of understanding what's going on. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's fun stuff.
Yeah. You guys are going to be a real power couple between Sarah's like veterinary knowledge, and then if you keep learning on the podiatry side, you're going to be quite the horse care power couple.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what's really fun about that, Joe, is that's not what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. All we're trying to do is I'm in a spot right now with my horseshoeing to where it's like, this is where I am. This has gotten to the point now where I can just walk through this and I don't have to put a lot of thought into it. It's just kind of flow and instinct, and I'm getting them right. Okay. I know there's more. I know there's somebody better than me that can make me question myself when I pick up a foot. I'm looking for that. When I'm riding, I'm trying to put myself into a position with my horses that makes me question myself a little bit. And that's the only way I'm going to get better. And I want to get around people that can sit there when they ask me a question, I'm stumped and I got to figure this out. That to me, that's the only way you get better. And it's just, but it's not getting harder. It's not getting harder to learn. There's a lot out there, and especially on the riding side of things. And then, you get into the shoe inside and the bony column of these horses and stuff. And it'll be those two things the rest of my life. I'm good. There's enough there to chase. I'm pretty convinced of that. Yeah. Yeah. The more you learn, the more you understand, and the better you can be with those horses. Yeah.
Well, here's a question for you, and kind of changing gears from the horseshoeing stuff. It ties back to near the beginning of the podcast. You mentioned that, you've kind of gotten to the point where you realize that, family is actually more important than horses. Yeah. And even in this industry, and on top of that, you're looking at showing horses, and that's time on the road. You've already spent most of your career, I know, on the road traveling around. So when it comes to changing your priorities like that, because like for me, you made me think, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I ever had a real conscious thought that people were less important than horses. I think horses were pretty important, and I was probably kind of dismissive of some human needs. But when you said that, I was like, yeah, I would agree with that. So for someone like me, I know I probably have been worse at putting people first, but I never, if you had said are people or horses more important, I probably would have said people. And so that's got to be a pretty big change for you to go like, all right, you know what? My family is really important, and especially just people in general. And so when you're approaching, what is your mindset, and how do you approach, doing things different with your family, or, spending time with them, or what does that look like? And what has changed for you as far as how you prioritize, obviously, because that's an action to say that your family is more important than horses. What's changed for you, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think what I mean by my family is more important is it's my responsibility to make sure they have clothes on their back, a roof over their head, and they're fed, But the most important thing for me, and just maybe how I grew up and what my experiences have been with relationships with people or family or whatever, and then maybe having friends and watching them and their experiences with their family and how their kids feel about them as parents, right? And then I just, I got a phone call yesterday or day before from a friend, and he said, Ricky, he's a concrete guy. and he said, Ricky, I need help today, and my guys aren't going to show up on a Saturday. And he said, I couldn't get a hold of you. I called your wife, and I've got your 2 oldest boys with me. I'm like, all right. He's 7-year-old and a 9-year-old on a concrete job. And I go, okay. I go, how's that working out? I mean, is everything good? And he goes, I'm telling you, man. He goes, it's really crazy because I've got 18 and 20-year-old boys, and yours are more capable than they are. As far as 18 and 20-year-old boys hired. And he says, your 7 and 9-year-old in a lot of ways are more capable than they are. And he goes, I love it. Absolutely love it. And so, Ben, I think for me, that's it, man. I really want my boys to, like my horses, to where if the going gets tough, whether they make a bad decision with me in our home, on our place, or they get out into the world and they make a bad decision, and God knows I have a lot of them, that they always know, this is the way I want my horses to be, that they can, that we can visit about it and not have it be a ton of trouble, you know? And be really fair and just honest about the conversation to where they're very comfortable with the discomfort and that we can work our way through it. And I think that's part of why those boys were able to work with that grown man here a couple days ago on a concrete job, and him feel that way about those boys, because things can happen and they can work their way through it and not shut down emotionally. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'd like to try to help myself. That's what I'm trying to do for me too, right? But help my family, and especially those kids, or if it's my wife, to where she can feel comfortable talking to me and not feel attacked or threatened or like she has to hold something back, and we can honestly be comfortable going through this place, you know? So that's the drive. I don't care what my kids want to do. I don't care if, I don't care about the things. It's the big one for me is I need to make sure that I am around and I am an influence to where I can be of that influence for them, to where they can learn how to be comfortable in the world that we have, to the best of, I just got to try and do my part in that area and prepare them for the world. And same thing with my horses. I got to prepare them for the world to where they can sort through the trouble without being troubled within themselves, right? So the balance of that, you have to be around to be able to get that done. And this last few weeks, since I stopped working for Olson's, I had to jam a bunch of work in a quick way, and it reminds me of 5 or 6 years ago. And I don't, to be honest, I like the work and what I'm doing, but I don't like it. I don't like being away from my family that as much as I have been. And I just sat down with Sarah this morning and said, this is what we've got over the next 3 weeks. This is what I have, what I see, but it's 3 solid weeks and I'm not comfortable with this. And I have a wife that says, we're okay. You need to do this. You need to do this. And when this is over, it'll open up our schedule and we'll be able to do things differently. But right now, this is what we have to sacrifice and do. And she says, I'm okay at home by myself, handling what we have to handle here at home. And that helps a lot too, to know that she's on that side. This time I'm not going to be able to, but most of the time, you guys, when I do leave for a week or two, I usually take 1 or 2 of the kids with me whenever I go. They're homeschooled, so we have freedom to be able to do that. And that's one of the reasons we homeschool. They say they love homeschooling, but sometimes their teacher is a little bit tough to get around. Yeah, that's their mom. And, but I take them with, and thank goodness she hasn't. And I know the day's coming, but I don't have to school them too much when we're on the road because we're doing all kinds of other things, and it's just to get him out there. Keegan went with me on the West Coast run. He took his pony with him. We had a great time, and just getting out into the world and seeing how the world works and exchanging with other people and different types of kids that come from different cultures and just learning how to get through the world, And so that's what I think about if you ask me, what does that part of the family mean, is that's it. That's it. I'd like to help my children get through this world, because we all know it's kind of troubled, get through this troubled world without being troubled inside. Yeah. That's the focus. That's the goal. And that's the balance that Sarah and I are trying to get going. Yeah.
Yeah. Ricky, it seems like, there's people that get around horses because they're trying to fix themselves, and then I think when they think about their family, they're like, well, I'm going to work with horses and I'm going to get good at this, and that'll probably spill over to other areas of my life. And then, I'll become a better person. But it takes more than that. It takes being intentional. Just like, you could be great with your family and not be good with horses. You would have to be intentional. You couldn't just keep being a nice guy and you would become a better horseman. And so what I'm hearing from you is just more intentionality, like thinking about those interactions. And in the same way, the joke about, pastors' kids are always the worst, because just being a pastor wouldn't make you a good dad. You have to be intentional in how you are a dad. And, listening to you, that reminds me of my childhood. I had kind of a weird childhood, but my favorite part and the thing I remember the most is my dad took him with me, and he did odd jobs and all kind of stuff we would do: electrical, plumbing, concrete, build stuff, just you name it, we did it. And that was the best part about growing up, is because I knew my dad had some flaws, but I've always wondered, because I love my dad dearly. Someone asked me the other day, when you hear, when someone says your dad's name, or if I say, tell me about your dad, what's the first thing you think? And I said, I love him. And I really do. But man, there were some times where you'd think, why, and he wasn't like, he was a wonderful dad. It's just, it's just not like you always had the best encounters, right? Or had the best, deepest relationship. But now that I think back on it and listening to you, for all of his faults, he was at least intentional in showing me that he loved me by having him with him. And that meant the world to me, because I knew that he loved me, even though he acted funny sometimes. I was there for a reason. And I learned a lot and got to spend time with him and felt wanted, and learned some of the things like you're talking about your boys, where, people call your dad and go, hey, your son, can he come work with me today? And you're like a 10-year-old kid, and you have some grown man that runs a company asking your dad if you can go help him for the day. And
well,
that's really cool.
Yeah, they didn't even ask me. They
didn't even ask you.
He called to say, just so you know, I have them. Good friend.
That's crazy.
It's a wild phone call.
Yeah, and that's what I would like to have happen too. Is the people that we trust, they know, and take them, take them, go do stuff with them. And then it's kind of like like Joe Walter says, he goes, just don't pick up on your reins, just work your feet and then see what your horse wants to do, and then correct from there. And it's kind of what that's like. Yeah. See what those kids do, and then we'll talk about it when they get home, and then we'll sort it out from there. Yeah, we'll sort it out. From there.
Yeah. Cool.
Good stuff.
Well, Ricky, this has been a pretty awesome visit, man. I enjoy. Really happy you were able to come on. When I called you, I was like, it's hard to say where in the world Ricky is right now. So I'm glad we were able to kind of get it to work out pretty quick. But yeah, man, this has been a lot of fun. You were talking about Joe Walter. Ben and I have talked about Joe, and we've had him on here. Joe's the type of guy who, like, you talk to him and you always finish the conversation like feeling good about life. It's like he's like everybody's grandpa, or at least for our age difference. It feels
sure,
like talking to your grandpa.
I'm sure he's gonna love to hear that.
Yeah. but he is awesome. But likewise, man, I enjoy getting to talk to you because you talk about intentionality. It's really easy to have kind of a lot of inch deep conversations with people. I grew up, I joke with people, like, people in Appalachia are masters of talking a lot and not saying anything.
Sure.
Like there's just a lot of that, because that's kind of how it is, and it's like that other places. But around here, it's like you can say, there's like, man, the words, there were a lot of words coming out of his mouth, but he really didn't communicate a whole lot.
Yeah.
But with you, it's nice because I feel like you have things on your mind, you like to talk about them, and it's always very stimulating conversation. So again, I really enjoy you making time to talk with us today, man.
Well, thank you for appreciating my style.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit of a chore for me, but yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ricky, like Joe said, it's nice talking to you because we do talk about this stuff all the time, but you're a great example. And you're a good example of a man who's like working through things and changing and being intentional in all those different areas of his life. And like, man, you started it off just right. You said you're getting to where you feel you're like, I'm growing up, I'm feeling more comfortable with myself and not taking yourself so seriously. And you're a great example. And
well, thank you.
Hearing all those things from you, I know it's the same old stuff, right? It's like all those books you're talking about, but especially for younger guys like us, when we talk to somebody who's been there and done that, and you're not just talking the rhetoric, you're talking about how you've applied it or how you hope to apply it or how you see it in the future and some of the pitfalls in your past. And thanks, man. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for allowing me to share, because I like talking about it too, I do. I like talking about it too. So it's always, the subject today is usually what's on my mind 99.9% of the time. It really, really is. And I think it's on a lot of people's minds too. I don't think people just walk around, it's just always about material things. I think that's one of the biggest things that there is just how do we get through this? How do we manage ourselves through this world? It's a big one, and sometimes, gosh, if you're a drinking, fighting, loving cowboy, it's okay to think that way and feel that way. You don't have to be tougher than everything around you necessarily. And actually what I'm learning is being meek, you kind of are. That's the kind of thing I'm learning. The more relaxed you get and the more comfortable you get, actually, the tougher you actually are. And it's really how you handle all these things that aren't comfortable and just how you compose yourself and how you are. And, you could look at it and say, I sure wish I'd have had this kind of sorted out inside of myself earlier, but that it wasn't meant to be that way. It was meant for me to start to feel it today. And that's what I'm just trying to relax to and go with. And you know what I mean? Just kind of run with that for a little while and not worry too much about what I should have done before or where I messed up before. It's the great thing is I think I'm starting to feel it today, and just keep and not that you try to make it necessarily better. It's just what it is, and just keep rocking and rolling with it. And the things that are my horses and my family and my friends. And when I do express that next level of something in helping somebody with their horse, that's really can be a touchy thing. People can get, if you're not careful, you can really offend someone because you're kind of going to some pretty sacred areas if you're not careful, and then to have feedback from those things I just described, people and horses and livestock and whatever, to where they come to you and say, I really enjoyed that. That's good stuff, especially that's not what I used to hear. So to be able to adjust that in that way and get that to where it's becoming more and more consistent for me is also able to help me relax a little bit and not fight it so hard, Yeah. So, and I know you two struggle with it, and I know everyone struggles with it. It's all about how do I get along with Joe? How do I do that? To where I'm okay. I don't know if Joe's okay, but I'm okay. How do I get along with Ben? Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Think about it. We do a podcast online once a week, and we're both pretty dynamic individuals. And it's like being married a little bit. It's weird, but yeah, it's fun because we get to talk to all you guys, but we get to have this relationship people don't see behind the scenes where, you're working on something from 8 hours apart. And that's the funnest thing, man.
Yeah.
I think.
So
it's like you just said, it's fun for me. I don't know if it's fun for Joe, but I'm having a good time.
I think it is.
It's fun.
So Joe, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks, huh?
Yeah, like 2 weeks. Yep.
And then at Brandeman's, are you going, Ben?
I'm not going to make it to, is that Pawhuska you're talking about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll be in Texas the next weekend, but I'm not going to make it to Oklahoma.
Dang it. All right.
I know I was signed up before and then it got changed, but I'm getting married in January and I've got so many things coming up that I'm going to make November in Texas, but I just don't think I can do Pawhuska.
I understand that. Yeah. Well, too bad. Are you going to stay in Brand, Joe, a little bit?
Yeah. I think we're going to stay for at least two of the days.
Me too. So that'll be fun. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. That'll be talk about you were talking about stuff that makes you uncomfortable going the deep end. That'll be the deep end for me, man. I've never been around that type of stuff before on that scale. So that'll be all new territory for me.
Well, I'll help make it uncomfortable for you.
Good. I'm sure I'll need your help.
I'll be there right beside you. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Don't hang up. I'm going to end this thing.
All righty.
Thank you, Ricky. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the podcast you just listened to, take a moment and head on over to Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. There you can leave us a review, or better yet, give us 5 stars. You can also find On the Move on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Folks, we really appreciate the support. It allows us to do what we do here and keep growing week by week. Until next time, stay on the move.